Ukrainian drones have struck a vital rail hub, paralyzing a military transport and causing nearly $1 billion in damage. On January 28th, an entire rail corridor went offline. A military supply train was left immobilized. Fires burned for hours. Ammunition continued to detonate long after the initial strike ended. Preliminary assessments place total losses between $750 million and $1.1 billion. This includes destroyed cargo, rail infrastructure, emergency response costs, and long-term disruption. This was not the result of a massive missile barrage or a large-scale air assault. It began with a limited number of UJ-26 Beaver drones and a decision made only hours earlier. The operation did not focus on frontline units. It targeted the system behind them: power, coordination, and movement. What followed exposed how modern air defense can unravel when its network fractures. And once that structure failed, nothing behind the front moved the same way again. By midwinter, Ukraine faced a growing problem. Ammunition shortages were no longer temporary setbacks. Cold weather slowed movement, but Russian units continued to fire at a steady pace. The reason was simple. Rail convoys kept arriving deep behind the front, delivering shells, fuel, and spare parts on schedule. Ukrainian commanders recognized an uncomfortable reality. Destroying individual positions at the front line changed very little. Damaged batteries were replaced within days. Losses were absorbed as long as supply trains continued to move without interruption. The weakness was not manpower or morale, it was logistics. Rail transport had become Russia's primary artery. A single military train could sustain multiple formations through the winter. Interrupting that flow, even briefly, would ripple across entire sectors already strained by weather and distance. Ukraine adjusted its approach. Instead of striking hardened defenses, planners focused on the point where movement begins. The objective was not dramatic destruction, but calculated disruption. Approval came quietly. No public statements, no visible buildup. Just a deliberate decision to break the rhythm of supply and let winter magnify the consequences. The operation was never built around a single train. Ukrainian planners aimed at something deeper. The true target was Russia's confidence in protecting its rear areas. Systems such as Pantsir S-1, S-300, and Tor M2 were designed to function as part of an integrated shield. None of them worked alone. Each relied on stable electricity, continuous data links, and synchronized radar coverage. When those elements aligned, the defense appeared impenetrable. When one failed, reaction time collapsed. Ukrainian analysts focused on this dependency. They understood that modern air defense is not defeated by speed alone, but by timing and separation. A radar without power is blind. A launcher without target data is slow. A crew without network coordination hesitates. Rather than chasing individual vehicles, planners search for the junction where power supply, detection, and logistics flow overlapped. The goal was not to destroy equipment for spectacle. It was to create a temporary operational vacuum, measured in minutes, not hours. That window was enough. If air defense hesitated even briefly, movement behind the front would become exposed. The entire mission was shaped around opening that gap before anyone realized it existed. From that point forward, planning centered on silence, precision, and strict control of time. Preparation began weeks before the first drone ever lifted from the ground. During this phase, no aircraft crossed the border. No signals were tested in the air. Everything happened through data. Ukrainian teams collected information continuously. They tracked shift change patterns, rail schedules, and radar activity cycles. Every movement was logged by time and location. Patterns were reviewed until deviations became predictable. Multiple flight paths were simulated to measure how Russian defenses might respond. Dozens of routes were rejected. Any route showing more than 100 meters of positional error was removed immediately. Precision was not optional. Each UJ-26 Beaver was adjusted for independent operation.
Check the fuel! All right,
Navigation systems were optimized to function without GPS. Instead, they relied on inertial guidance and preloaded terrain references.
The congestion at the bridge is
The loss of communication was treated as an expectation,
What about the
not a
western bypass near
failure.
the
Planners
threat marker?
also prepared for worst-case conditions. Scenarios included complete signal blackouts and continuous electronic warfare pressure. By 1:40 a.m., final parameters were locked. From that moment forward, nothing would be changed. Every drone would fly alone, following timing rather than commands. The operation depended on discipline, not firepower. When launch time arrived, success would depend on preparation already finished. At 1:52 a.m., the final tactical decision was made. The strike would not be direct. It would be layered, timed, and executed in stages. The first phase focused on exposure. A selected group of UJ-26 Beaver drones was assigned to fly at altitudes likely to be detected. Their role was not survival. Their task was to force Russian radar units to activate full search modes. Once systems powered up, emission patterns would reveal the locations of Pantsir S1 and Tor M2 units. The second phase aimed at degradation. While attention shifted upward, additional drones moved at extremely low altitudes. These aircraft avoided hardened military targets entirely. Instead, they were directed towards secondary infrastructure. This included power distribution points and switching equipment that supported air defense operations. The third phase was conditional. It would only begin once signs of disruption appeared. Indicators included delayed radar updates and forced transitions to manual control by crews. At that moment, the remaining drones moved toward the primary objective. Their timing was calculated to exploit hesitation rather than overwhelm with force. The principle was simple. Direct confrontation favors the defender. Interference favors the attacker. By separating detection, degradation, and attack, each action amplified the next. Nothing relied on luck. At 2:11 a.m., the first UJ-26 Beaver lifted off from a forward launch site. Within minutes, additional drones followed from separate locations. Each departed on a different schedule to avoid forming a detectable pattern. The aircraft crossed the border along diverging routes. Timing replaced communication. Russian electronic warfare reacted almost immediately. GPS signals disappeared. Satellite links weakened. The loss was expected. Each drone continued forward using inertial guidance. Altitude was kept low to reduce exposure. Known radar corridors and populated areas were avoided. Several drones were assigned as decoys. Their routes were intentionally visible to draw attention and force tracking modes. The remaining drones maintained total emission silence. They followed internal clocks alone. Once airborne, coordination ended. No commands could be sent. No corrections were possible. As the drones moved deeper, spacing increased. Each aircraft functioned independently, rather than as part of a swarm. By the time operators identified the direction of movement, infiltration was complete. At 2:24 a.m., air defense units across the sector shifted into heightened readiness. Pantsir S1 crews powered up combat systems, while Tor M2 vehicles received movement orders. Data began flowing unevenly. Radar contacts appeared on some screens, but not others. Information arrived seconds apart, breaking coordination between units. Operators detected movement, yet struggled to determine direction. Without stable synchronization, threat assessment slowed down. Decisions that normally required seconds took much longer. Each crew waited for confirmation that never arrived on time. As electronic interference intensified, several systems were forced into manual modes. Reaction now depended on human judgment instead of automated processing. Defensive confidence gave way to caution. The defense was active, but no longer synchronized. At 2:31 a.m., a single UJ-26 Beaver dropped lower toward a secondary target. It was not a radar site or a command vehicle. It was a power distribution node supporting nearby air defense units. The drone approached from the rear, descending beneath sensor coverage. The strike hit the voltage regulation section. The explosion was limited, but the effect spread immediately. Regulators failed. Circuit paths overloaded. Across the network, radar displays flickered and tracking data stalled. Control computers restarted, forcing crews into long boot cycles. Air defense vehicles remained mechanically active, yet coordination collapsed. Pantsir S1 launchers lost real-time data flow. The system was not destroyed, it was separated. Integrated defenses were forced into isolation. The decisive moment had passed. At 2:36 a.m., the remaining UJ-26 Beaver drones began their final movement. The disruption had opened a narrow operational window. The drones advanced from different directions and separate altitudes. This forced crews to constantly adjust tracking, slowing reaction time further. The first impact disabled the rail movement. The strike targeted the locomotive system, leaving the train immobile. The second drone hit a fuel component along the supply line. Fire spread rapidly, blocking access routes for emergency response. The third aircraft aimed deeper into the formation, where military cargo was concentrated. The detonation initiated secondary explosions that expanded the blast zone. Within minutes, the site was engulfed. Equipment losses were estimated to exceed $120 million. Dozens of rail assets were rendered unusable. Recovery would require weeks, not hours. The strike was decisive because of timing. By the time systems stabilized, the damage was irreversible. The immediate aftermath was operational paralysis. The damaged train could not be cleared from the tracks. Power instability prevented rapid repairs. Emergency units were forced to withdraw as ammunition nearby detonated sporadically. Within hours, the entire rail segment was closed under military order. Initial material losses exceeded $180 million. The true cost would rise as delayed deliveries accumulated. The disruption did not remain local. Multiple transport schedules were canceled or rerouted, creating bottlenecks across the region. To restore confidence, additional air defense assets were pulled from the front. Pantsir S-1 and Tor M2 systems were reassigned to protect logistical nodes. This reduced coverage where active fighting continued. Each train now required extended security, raising costs and slowing throughput. Ukraine did not gain territory that night, but the effect was measurable. A single operation forced a strategic shift valued at over $750 million. The battlefield remained unchanged. The balance behind it did not. Modern wars are no longer decided only by who holds the ground. They are decided by who controls the movement behind it. When supply chains slow, pressure builds silently. Ammunition arrives late. Repairs take longer. Decisions become cautious. This operation showed how fragile large systems can be when a single link fails. It was not about overwhelming force, but about timing and coordination. Rail hubs, power nodes, and logistics corridors are no longer safe. If you think this kind of warfare will define the future, leave your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe logistics has become more important than firepower? If you found this analysis valuable, like the video and subscribe for more in-depth breakdowns. Your perspective matters. The discussion continues below.